I want you to picture something, a scenario that may seem all too familiar. Your first day at a new company, and you walk in, shake hands, and sit down at your assigned desk. And before you have even opened your laptop, before you have taken a single sip of your coffee, your new manager appears, walks over, doesn't sit down, and looks at you like something he found on the bottom of his shoe. And says, with a tone that is truly unforgettable, "We've reviewed your file overnight. We don't think you're the right fit. We're going to have to let you go today." 81 minutes. That is how long I was employed before they fired me. It was truly a shocking turn of events. What they did not know, what nobody in that building knew, was that 3 weeks earlier, I had quietly, legally, and completely legitimately acquired a 72% controlling stake in their parent company. I was not just their new employee, I was, as of that morning, the single largest shareholder of the company that owned them. They fired their own boss before he had finished his coffee. This is that story, and I promise you, it gets better with every single minute. If you have ever walked into a room and been underestimated before you even opened your mouth, this story is going to feel like the most satisfying thing you have heard all year. So, subscribe to Twisted Truths, hit that like button right now, and do not go anywhere. Because the moment this story turns, and it turns hard, you are going to want to be exactly here for it. My name is Ethan, and I need you to understand exactly what I do before any of this makes sense. I am a turnaround specialist. That is my profession, my actual, specific, very niche profession. What that means, in plain language, is that I am brought in when companies are in trouble, when the numbers don't work, when the leadership has failed, and when investors are bleeding, and nobody inside the building knows how to stop it. I come in, I assess, I restructure, I fix. I have done this 11 times in the last 14 years, and truly, it has been a wild ride. 4 of those companies are now publicly listed. 2 were sold at significant profit, and 1 became an industry leader in its sector. I am not cheap, I am not loud, and I do not announce myself. I find the problem, I position myself accordingly, and I fix it quietly, usually before the people causing the problem even know I am in the room. In late 2022, I was approached by a private equity group about a struggling mid-sized technology distribution firm. The company was called Vantage, based in Birmingham, with approximately 240 staff, 3 regional offices, and a leadership team that had been making catastrophic decisions for approximately 4 consecutive years. The private equity group had been watching it deteriorate, remembering, perhaps, the potential it once had. They had tried twice to implement changes through the existing management, but it hadn't worked. They asked me if I was interested in acquiring a controlling stake. They would sell me 72% at a deeply discounted valuation, in exchange for a full operational turnaround within 24 months. I reviewed the financials, spent 3 weeks doing due diligence, and the business was salvageable, just. I agreed. The acquisition was completed on the 14th of November, 2022, quietly, no press release, no announcement to staff. This was standard practice in situations like this. You don't telegraph your moves before you understand the battlefield. My plan was simple. I would join Vantage as a senior operations consultant, a normal hire on paper, spend 30 days understanding the culture from the inside, identify the key problems, and then reveal my position at the right moment. Controlled, strategic, precise, and I had every reason to believe it would work. I had done this before, and it always worked. But what I had never encountered before was being fired before I made it to lunch on day 1. December 1st, 2022. I arrived at Vantage Birmingham office at 8:45 in the morning. signed in at reception, and was given a visitor lanyard, which I found mildly amusing, given the circumstances. The HR coordinator, a young woman named Priya, showed me to my desk, offered me coffee, and explained that my line manager, the director of operations, would be with me shortly. I sat down, opened my bag, and took out my notebook. At 9:17, a man appeared at the end of the row, and I couldn't help but notice him. He had a broad, confident walk, the kind of man who fills a doorway on purpose. His name was Craig Mercer, director of operations, and he had been at Vantage Tech for 9 years, considered himself, by all accounts, the real power in that building. He walked over to my desk, did not extend his hand, did not sit down, and did not smile. He looked at my CV on his clipboard, then he looked at me, and something in his expression shifted, very slightly, into something I can only describe as contempt. He said, "We reviewed your file last night. Your background is in consulting. We need someone operational, someone who knows this industry from the inside. This isn't going to work. We're going to have to let you go. Today, HR will process the paperwork." I looked at him, and I want to be clear about what I felt in that moment. Not anger, not humiliation, something much closer to curiosity. Because what Craig Mercer had just done, in his 9 years of presumed power, was walk up to the majority shareholder of the company that signed his paycheck and fire him. Before 10 o'clock on a Thursday morning, in front of 11 colleagues who were pretending very hard not to listen. I closed my notebook, capped my pen, and I said, very quietly, "All right, could you do me one favor? Could you ask your CEO to be available this afternoon, around 3 o'clock? Tell him it's regarding the ownership structure. He'll understand." Craig stared at me. The kind of stare that happens when someone says something that doesn't compute. He said, "Excuse me." I said, 3 o'clock, please, it's important." I picked up my bag, nodded to Priya at the door, and I walked out. My phone was on the table with a calm expression. I went to a coffee shop, 2 streets away, and ordered a flat white. I sat by the window and waited. At 10:43, my phone rang with an unknown number and a Birmingham area code. I let it ring. At 11:09, it rang again with a different number, and I let it ring. At 11:31, my legal counsel called me directly. He had received a call from Vantage Tech's internal legal team, and they had, apparently, spent the morning quietly pulling ownership records, and had found exactly what I already knew they would find. My counsel told me the CEO, a man named Robert Ashby, was requesting an urgent meeting, not at 3 o'clock, but now. I finished my coffee, left a tip, and walked back. The boardroom on the 4th floor had 6 people in it when I walked in. Robert Ashby, CEO, at the head of the table, the finance director, their head of legal, 2 people I didn't recognize, who turned out to be external advisors called in at short notice, and Craig Mercer, sitting at the far end of the table, looking like a man who had just understood something very terrible about his morning. I sat down, and nobody offered me coffee this time. Robert Ashby, to his credit, was composed, a measured man. He slid a document across the table, the share register with my name on it, 72%. He said, "Mr. Lawson, I think we need to have a conversation." I said, "Yes, I think we do. I want to be honest with you. I did not go into that room looking for revenge. I am not that kind of man. What I went in for was clarity." I explained to Robert exactly who I was, exactly what I did, exactly why I had structured the acquisition the way I had. I told him that my intention had never been to embarrass anyone. And he handed me the clearest possible reason to fix it fast. The day I sold my stake, I sat in my car outside that building for a few minutes, and I thought about a visitor lanyard, a clipboard, and a man who didn't extend his hand. And I thought, the most dangerous person in any room is never the loudest one. It is the one sitting quietly at the desk by the window, with a notebook and a pen. Here is what 81 minutes taught me. The people who dismiss you fastest are almost always the ones who have done the least homework. Arrogance is just ignorance with better posture. Before you fire someone, before you dismiss someone, before you write someone off based on a 30-second impression, read the room, read the documents, and maybe check the share register. Have you ever been dismissed, written off, underestimated by someone who had absolutely no idea what you were actually capable of? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit differently, share it with someone today who needs the reminder that the quietest person in the room is sometimes the most powerful. Subscribe to Twisted Truths' new story every single week. Next week, a woman was passed over for a promotion 7 times by the same manager. On the 8th time, she didn't apply for the job, she bought the company instead. I'll see you then.